We're delving deep into changing the rear brakes on the Dodge Caravan. Make sure you stick around to the end because there's a surprise waiting. Before we begin, let's make sure we have all the necessary tools and components at our disposal. I particularly favor these brands because they usually come with the necessary brake hardware. Ensure your vehicle is in park. It's also a good idea to chock one of your wheels. Now let's get the van off the ground. You'll want to jack on the pinch rail. This step varies slightly from jacking the front. If you saw my video on the front brakes, you'll know what I mean. You're going to place the jack stands where these triangles are. Slowly lower the van until it rests securely on the jack stand. Hold off on removing the jack just yet. I'll explain why in a minute. Give the van a decent shake. Ensure it's firmly in place. No matter how you go about it, you're going to need a 19mm to loosen the lug nuts. Now let's talk about why I recommend leaving the jack under the vehicle. I like to call this the 3 points of protection. First, you have the van fully supported on the jack stand. Second, the jack is positioned to catch the van if the jack gives out. And third, you have the tire underneath the vehicle. So if the jack gives out, it'll catch the vehicle from hitting the ground. This setup provides you with 3 layers of protection. Now let's move on to checking your brake fluid. Do not fill it at this point. If your brakes are low, chances are your fluid will be low too. Don't worry, we'll address this at the end. Besides properly jacking up the vehicle, this is probably the second most crucial step. Perform a quick visual check of your parts before you start disassembling anything. Ensure nothing looks off. This step saves a lot of time and frustration if your parts are incorrect. Now that we've ensured everything looks good, let's start disassembling the brakes. Grab a 3/8 ratchet with the 13mm socket and a 15mm wrench to loosen the 2 brake caliper bolts. Next, carefully remove the brake caliper from the bracket. Be cautious not to twist it excessively to avoid kinking the brake hose. Use a piece of wire or a zip tie to secure the brake caliper. Do not let it hang freely. Best place to hang the rear caliper is right here from the coil spring. Perform a quick check on your caliper slides to ensure they are moving freely. We'll be servicing them in the near future. Now proceed to remove your brake pads. Inspect them for any irregularities or uneven wear. If your new pads didn't come with new hardware, you may have to reuse the old hardware. While not recommended, if necessary, ensure to clean them up a bit. We'll address this shortly. Now you're going to need an 18mm socket, and you're going to need a bit of force. These caliper bracket bolts are torqued down very tight, and they usually have a thread locker on them, so you're going to probably need some extra leverage. Now let's proceed to remove the rotor. It's likely to be seized, but with a little technique, it should come free. Install one lug nut a couple of turns, hit once and spin the rotor quarter turn, then hit again and spin another quarter turn. Repeat this process until it comes free. Here's where your real education begins. Neglecting what I'm about to teach you is a common cause that leads to a majority of brake problems. With all the parts now off, take a moment to double check and confirm you have the correct parts. Match the old rotor to the new one, ensuring they have the same diameter and thickness. Match the old brake pads to the new ones, and take note of any warning indicators and their positioning on the brake pads. Now let's turn our attention to the caliper bracket. Grab your small wire brush and thoroughly clean off any dirt, grime, and brake dust that you may have accumulated. If you're reusing your brake hardware, ensure it gets good cleaning too. Spray it with brake cleaner to eliminate all the residue. Next, remove the caliper slides one at a time and inspect them closely. Take a clean rag to wipe away the old brake grease. You'll be applying fresh brake grease to these slides, ensuring they move freely, just like this. Now here's where we're going to take a little bit of a detour. Especially if you saw my front brake video, this is going to be a bit different. Now it may seem like we're taking a step backward, but if you watch closely, you'll see how this speeds up the process. Skipping this step could lead to a lot of needless aggravation on your part. Before we proceed further, we need to reattach the caliper bracket and caliper without the rotor. It's much easier to spin the caliper back this way than have it flopping all over, making it challenging to hold still. This brake piston cube is likely your cheapest and easiest option. While there's other tools and kits available, you can't beat this for about $10. Remember to proceed slowly and steadily with firm pressure while spinning the piston back. Now that you have the caliper spun back, you can remove the caliper and bracket and we can pick up where we left off. Neglecting this step could potentially lead to a rear brake pulsation. You won't feel it in the steering wheel like you will a front brake pulsation. You'll feel it under your seat, especially at highway speeds. Grab a small wire brush or some fine grit sandpaper. The appearance doesn't matter much. It just needs to be smooth to the touch. Use the wire brush to clear off any buildup. Then spray brake clean on a rag and wipe the hub clean. Run your finger around it. If it feels smooth without imperfections or bumps, you're good to go. Now that the hub is clean, apply a thin layer of anti-seize, spreading it over the hub surface. You don't need a lot. Less is more. This prevents future rust, and the next time you change your brakes, the rotors will come off much easier. Before we proceed to install the new brake rotors, give them a good spray with brake cleaner and ensure they're wiped dry. Remember to do this for both rotors. Moving on, it's highly recommended to apply some form of thread locker to the threads of the caliper mounting bracket bolts. These bolts tend to come loose due to the extreme pressure they constantly endure. Next, install the caliper bracket and hand tighten or use a ratchet until snug. Here's where a torque wrench is essential. You're going to torque the rear caliper bracket bolts to 74 foot-pounds. Now spin the rotor and check for any interference with the bracket. We'll be doing this every step to ensure absolute silence upon completion. Take a small amount of brake grease and apply it to the ends of the brake pads where they fit into the caliper bracket. This ensures smooth sliding. Now spin the rotor after installing both brake pads to ensure there's no noise. Now you can reinstall the brake caliper over the new brake pads. Proceed to install the caliper bolts and tighten until just snug. These will be torqued down to 26 foot-pounds. Remember, you need your 15mm wrench to hold it in place while tightening these bolts. Now spin the rotor to ensure smooth movement and check for any unexpected noises. After completing both sides, reinstall your tires, ensuring they are seated evenly, and hand tighten all the lug nuts for now. Jack up the vehicle on one side at a time and safely remove the jack stand. Slowly lower the vehicle until it just touches the ground. Torque your wheels to 100 foot-pounds, tightening them in the star pattern. Once fully torqued, lower that side completely and repeat these steps for the opposite side. This step is crucial. Pump your brakes. The calipers you squeeze back need time to work their way back to touching the new brake pads. You'll feel the brake pedal start to return to its normal position. Double check your brake fluid. If your brakes were low, your fluid will likely be where it needs to be. If not, add as needed. Now it's time for the road test. Avoid any panic stops for at least 50 to 200 miles, allowing the brake pads to cure to the rotors and preventing premature wear for better stopping performance. Listen for any noises. There shouldn't be any if you followed my directions and checked every step upon assembly. Ensure there are no pulsations. If you clean the hub as I showed, there should be no issues. Take a decent ride with a mix of local roads and highways to confirm there are no problems. After your road test, double check your brake fluid and retorque your wheels to 100 foot-pounds after 50 miles. I highly recommend rewatching this first part again, especially if you have no automotive experience. It's good for you to get a grasp of this stuff. If you're feeling more confident and you want a more condensed version, well, there's the surprise. Immediately after this outro, I took the opposite side, I condensed it down to 2 minutes. I sped it up, there's no commentary, but the torque specs and the sizes are all there waiting for you. I'll be creating a similar video for front brake pads and another for changing a front brake caliper. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to be notified of upcoming videos. Until then, check your brakes and drive safe.